photography.
I used these shorts as a template since I really liked the fit, but the color of the shorts did not resemble what I thought they would be when I ordered them online. I chose this fabric that I had sitting in my closet for the longest time because I wanted a safari style. You can choose to make a pattern or not. I chose to make a pattern just so that I can have that particular shape of shorts, and at the time I was really planning on returning these shorts, so it made sense to me. But what you do is basically line up the seam of the shorts and make sure to trace that all the way around. Also, something I didn't consider when doing this was that these shorts have darts in them. So you'll also need to have a seam allowance for those darts. I found a really good trick online on how to do this, but if you want to learn how to do darts, please look it up. I don't know how to explain it. And once I finished my darts, I had to retrace the entire shorts again. The next thing I traced was the zipper part, so if your pants or shorts have any kind of seal to them, you'll want to trace out an allowance for that as well. Now trace the rest of your panels and then we're done. Just kidding. We still have a long ways to go. The next thing to do is figure out where you want your pattern to show up on the front of your shorts, and then pin it down and cut it out. You'll need to cut out 2 panels per pattern, but make sure, please, to flip over your pattern. I made a huge mistake. Once you've recovered, you're gonna have to figure out how the hell to place these parts on such a tiny piece of fabric that you have left over. I mean, seriously, it's gonna be like the most intense game of puzzle you've ever played. In the end, I took the fall, and one of my back panels is now upside down. Whoop-de-doo. Someday, I will cover it with a pocket, but that day is not today. This is also another really cool trick I found on the internet, but I mean, if you can't figure it out from these images, then I can't help you. Sew along the dotted line you've just stitched, and then you'll have your dart. Next, we're going to assemble the crotchal area. I don't know why that's the first thing to assemble, but that's what the internet told me, so we're gonna do it that way. Now, if this is confusing for you, just know that the opposite sides get attached, and the right side goes on the inside. And then we're gonna place them on top of each other again, and sew in that other crotchal piece. And if you know anything about sewing, you'll know that you want to pin everything together really good. I'm sorry, Mom, okay? Really well. I know grammar. Also, if you're new to sewing, you'll want to seal it off by going back and forth at the very end. So far, this is what your pants are gonna look like. At this point, it's a good idea to pin them so you know where to sew. If you don't pin them, it'll be totally okay. I didn't pin mine, and they turned out fine. Okay, maybe I pinned them a little bit. On the other side, however, I decided not to sew it up all the way just because I'm putting a zipper there and I wasn't really sure how to assemble it yet. I wasn't really sure what kind of a hem I wanted on these pants yet, so I pinned the 2 styles I liked and went to go get some opinions. In the end, I just liked this style better. Still to this day, I don't really know how hemming works, but I think that I almost made a huge mistake here. I ended up just sewing the sides so that it would stick, and then I stressed out a lot. Always make sure to measure your hem all the way around to make sure that it's even, because this is a huge thing. If you sew it in place and it's not even, you're kind of screwed. After using the machine on the 2 sides of the shorts, I decided the only way I was going to be able to do this was to hand sew the rest of it, because I didn't want that stitch showing on the outside. If you know how I was supposed to do this, please tell me, but I think they turned out okay. Alas, my zipper had arrived in the mail, and I was ready to start sewing that up. My brain was having trouble comprehending this, so I played around with the waistband and tried to see how it would all come together. I measured out the zipper so it would be slightly longer than I needed it to be, and sewed up where I wanted to have the zipper end. Sorry for the off-centered visual here. In case you can't tell, I don't really know what I'm doing. A word of advice, don't do what I'm doing here. Instead, sew the zipper from the part where you can see the zipper. That way you'll be able to follow the zipper all the way down and your stitch won't come out crooked. Then close up the bottom. Okay, the only part of the online tutorial that I actually understood was what I'm doing now, which is sewing the two waistband parts together. The following instructions relayed that I was to somehow magically make the edge of the zipper go inside of the waistband, and I had no idea how to do that, so I improvised. If you're actually using this as a tutorial, sew the waistband from the inside first, because I did it the other way around and it did not go well for me. I also simultaneously sewed the raw edges of the inside using a zigzag stitch. I also managed to stab myself on multiple occasions. And then I sewed up the edges of the waistband to make it look like it had been professionally finished. Little do they know it wasn't. Lastly, I pinned up the inside and made sure it was all even before sewing it up, and oh god, I'm just watching the footage of me sewing it from the inside. Don't do this, I had to unstitch it all. So after double and triple checking my measurements, I made sure everything was pinned up nicely and I stitched it from the outside. As for the inside of the hem, I had to hand sew that. Yep, fun. Lots of fun. At least I was watching something funny, because otherwise it would have been a complete drag. Lastly, I wanted to add some belt loops to my shorts because I find that's one of my favorite parts of a pant, is the belt loops. To do this, I cut out about 5 rectangles and I sewed them inside out. The absolute hardest part of this is trying to turn them back the ways. So if your loopholes are too small, you might not be able to flip them inside out. Then I played around with where I wanted it to go and how I wanted it to look. I ended up pushing in the ends of the belt loops and sewing those together to avoid a frayed edge. And to make everything easier, I went and ironed them all down. I think at this point I might have also ironed the shorts themselves, but I'm not sure. I know you're supposed to, but I'm a little too lazy for that. Also, whatever I'm doing here, don't do that. I was going to sew on the buttons first, but then I realized that it wouldn't fit under the foot of my machine if I did that, so I went ahead and sewed down the loopholes on the front, but I ended up doing something different for the ones on the back. Since my plan was to sew buttons onto the front loopholes and that would hide the edges, on the back I decided to have a more traditional loophole. Have I been saying loophole this entire time? Don't I mean belt loops? What? After hand sewing the rest of these into place, I was physically exhausted. Who knew hand sewing could be this tiring? After making sure the belt loops worked like they should, I decided to start on the buttons. The last thing I had to do was sew the clasp. And since I kind of screwed up with making the waistband go all the way around, this was kind of an essential part.
Dopamine is synthesized from tyrosine. I can feel my heartbeat. I can feel the air I breathe. I can feel my vision. I can feel the sweat roll down as my pulse builds out. Wow.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching my video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up down below. If you're a frequent sewer and watched this and you were just like, no, please let me know if you have any tips. I do plan on doing a couple more sewing projects this month while we're in quarantine.
Why are we still here?
If you, oh my god, why do I clap all the time? What does a YouTuber do when they are trying to not be awkward? If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to see more because I come out with content every Saturday morning. Stay tuned for that stuff. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you all next Saturday. Bye. 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 I just drank. I should not be an alcoholic. Also, I can see.
No! No! Stay with me. As we can see, it's the queen in front of me, ready for a modeling shoot. Cut that shit out, DR. That's not cool. You're not gangster.